So, we've been looking at some pretty interesting stuff recently, and this information you sent over about this global manufacturer of heavy machinery, it really,
Yeah.
it really caught my eye. This case study from Cognitive Market Research.
Hmm.
It really dives into how they're rethinking their entire approach to
Hmm.
waste
Right.
resource consumption and how to make these just massive products recyclable.
Yeah,
And our goal today is to get to the heart of this.
absolutely.
What were their key strategies? What kind of result are they actually seeing?
Hmm.
And we're talking about,
Yeah.
re-engineering these enormous machines so they can be taken apart,
Hmm.
exploring some really wild new materials,
Yeah.
and then seeing how all of this impacts everything from their bottom line
Hmm.
to their sustainability efforts.
It's more than just a feel-good story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What's fascinating here is that there were some fundamental economic and environmental realities
Mm.
that drove this whole shift. I mean, this manufacturer wasn't just trying to be green. They were recognizing that the traditional linear model of production,
Right.
which is, make waste,
Yeah.
it's becoming increasingly untenable.
Yeah.
I mean, they were facing a perfect storm of rising landfill taxes, for example.
Wow.
Projections were showing a potential 30% increase over the next 5 years,
Oh, wow.
which alone made exploring these alternatives, a significant financial imperative.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you add to that, the unpredictable prices of key raw materials.
Right.
And suddenly a circular approach starts to look less like an environmental initiative
Yeah.
and more like a really smart business strategy.
It makes sense on multiple levels.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the core of their strategy, as the case study lays out, is this integration of closed-loop manufacturing with product lifecycle management.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for someone picturing, these giant earth movers and cranes and all this, what does that actually look like on
Yeah.
the ground?
Right.
How do you apply those concepts to something so complex?
Think of it as a complete shift in perspective.
Okay.
Instead of just focusing on the point of sale,
Right.
they're looking at the entire lifespan of these machines,
Right.
from the initial design all the way to what happens when they're no longer in use.
Got it.
So product lifecycle management is that overarching view, considering every stage.
Yeah.
And then closed loop is the active effort to keep the resources used within that life cycle for as long as possible.
Yeah.
So for this manufacturer, that meant a deep dive into how they design,
Okay.
what materials they use,
Yeah.
and how they can recover and reuse those materials at the end of a machine's life,
Right.
minimizing waste and their reliance on virgin resources.
So really, it's like a closed loop.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fascinating. And one of the first major changes that they highlight in the study is this
Right.
design for disassembly and recyclability.
Mm-hmm.
It almost seems paradoxical when you think about just the sheer ruggedness
Mm-hmm.
of this kind of machinery. How do they even approach
Right.
making these things easier to take apart?
Yeah. Our immediate thought is, massive welded structures.
Yeah.
But their innovation was in a significant re-engineering towards modularity and standardization.
Okay.
So imagine breaking down a complex piece of machinery
Yeah.
into smaller self-contained units
Right.
that can be attached and detached.
Like Lego almost.
Yeah, kind of like that. They redesigned key components with these standardized interfaces,
Okay.
almost like using universal connections.
Interesting.
And this immediately simplifies maintenance because if a specific module fails,
Mm-hmm.
you can replace just that part
Right.
instead of a much larger assembly.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
So instead of like a massive integrated repair,
Right.
it's more like swapping out a component.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes perfect sense for upkeep.
Mm-hmm.
But how does that then translate to better recyclability when the machine's life is over?
Well, those same standardized connections that make maintenance easier
Right.
also make disassembly for recycling far more efficient.
Okay.
Instead of having to deal with, complex welding or intricate non-uniform connections.
Right.
You have a machine that's built in a way that allows for relatively straightforward separation of materials.
Okay.
The case study also emphasizes that they developed these detailed technical manuals and even digital tracking systems that provide clear instructions on how to disassemble each machine for optimal material recovery.
Okay.
So it's not just about the design, it's about providing the knowledge and the roadmap to actually take these machines apart effectively,
Right.
whether it's for refurbishment of a component or for maximizing the recovery of valuable materials at the end of life.
That's a really insightful point.
Yeah.
It's the whole ecosystem,
Mm.
not just the design itself.
Exactly.
Now, the study also delves into the use of recycled and sustainable materials.
Right.
We're talking about incredibly powerful machinery here.
Yeah.
What kind of materials are they actually using? And how do they ensure that these materials can withstand these immense stresses involved?
Right.
I can't imagine they're replacing high-strength steel with just anything.
No, you're absolutely right. Performance is paramount.
Yeah.
This wasn't about sacrificing durability at all. What's fascinating is the significant investment in advanced material research
Okay.
that they undertook to identify and validate these high-performance alternatives. They've substantially increased their use of recycled metals and alloys,
Okay.
ensuring that they meet the stringent strength and durability requirements.
Yeah.
And they're also exploring innovative biodegradable composites for certain non-structural components.
Interesting.
For example, the case study briefly mentions some research into a new type of high-strength recycled steel alloy
Oh, wow.
that, after rigorous testing, proved to be just as robust as virgin steel for specific applications.
That's huge.
Yeah, so this kind of material science breakthrough was crucial in making this transition feasible.
It sounds like they're putting a lot of effort into making sure that it's not just a trade-off.
Absolutely.
Now, um, the study also mentions these long-term supplier partnerships
Right.
for recycled materials.
Ah,
And that seems really critical for ensuring not only the quality, but also a reliable supply.
it is.
What are some of the dynamics involved in setting up those kinds of relationships?
Building those robust partnerships is absolutely essential for creating a stable and dependable supply chain for recycled content.
Okay.
Unlike well-established markets for virgin materials,
Right.
the landscape for high-quality, consistent recycled industrial materials can be a bit more complex.
Yeah.
These long-term agreements provide the security of demand for recyclers,
Right.
which incentivizes investment in better processing technologies.
Right.
And for the manufacturer, it ensures a steady flow of materials that meet their specifications.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, and this also helps to mitigate the price volatility that's often associated with raw materials.
Right.
Furthermore, as the case study highlights, by prioritizing this recycled content, they significantly reduce the environmental burden associated with mining and processing new resources,
Yeah.
leading to that lower carbon footprint per unit, which we'll discuss a bit later.
Perfect segue.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're designing with the end in mind.
Right.
They're using more sustainable materials.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens to the machines once they've reached the end of their initial useful life?
Yeah.
That's where these remanufacturing and refurbishment programs come in.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
How are they actually making this work on such a large scale?
This is where that closed loop really becomes tangible.
Okay.
They've established a comprehensive system for taking back used machinery and components.
Okay.
So instead of these massive machines ending up as scrap,
Right.
they are collected, rigorously inspected,
Okay.
and then refurbished,
So like new again?
essentially brought back to it like new condition.
Wow.
And these remanufactured machines or components can then be reintroduced into the market,
Okay.
often with a warranty,
Wow.
extending their overall lifespan significantly.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And they even have a customer buyback program
They do.
to facilitate this return of old equipment.
Yes.
That sounds like such a smart way to ensure they actually get those machines back.
It is.
What kind of incentives do they offer?
The buyback program acts as a crucial link in that reverse logistics chain.
Okay.
They incentivize customers to return their end-of-life equipment by offering discounts
Makes sense.
on new purchases or even on refurbished models.
Oh, wow.
So this creates a win-win scenario.
Right.
The customer gets a more cost-effective upgrade option.
Yeah.
And the manufacturer secures a consistent stream of used equipment for their remanufacturing process.
Well, that's super smart.
And the case study emphasizes that they don't compromise on quality with these remanufactured parts at all.
Okay.
They undergo the same stringent testing as new components to ensure they meet the original performance specifications before being put back into service.
That's really good to know. It's all sounding incredibly efficient.
It is.
But even with designing for disassembly and these robust remanufacturing programs,
Yeah.
there's bound to be some waste generated during the initial manufacturing process itself.
Right.
How are they tackling that unavoidable waste?
That's where their advanced waste management and material recovery strategies come in.
Okay.
And they've implemented some really sophisticated technologies within their manufacturing facilities.
Like what?
A key aspect is the deployment of AI-powered robotic sorting systems.
Oh, wow.
So imagine these intelligent robots
Hmm.
that can identify and separate different types of waste materials,
All
like
right.
various metals, plastics, composites,
Yeah,
with far greater accuracy and speed than traditional manual sorting.
that's a significant leap from just, basic recycling bins.
Oh, absolutely.
How does that advanced sorting then feed back into their overall closed loop system?
So this highly efficient separation process
Yeah.
allows them to recover a much higher percentage of valuable materials from their manufacturing waste stream.
All right.
And these recovered materials are then reprocessed and directly reintegrated back into their own production cycles,
Got it.
further reducing their need for virgin resources and closing the loop within their operations.
So they're really like taking it to the next level.
They are.
Additionally, they've implemented these smart sensors and real-time monitoring systems
Yeah.
on their production lines
Mhm.
to track material usage and waste generation at every stage.
Right.
This data provides valuable insights, allowing them to proactively identify areas where they can optimize their processes
Mhm.
and minimize waste at the source.
Exactly.
It's not just about what they're doing within their own walls, though,
Right.
is it? The case study also highlights their collaboration with regulatory and industry bodies.
Yeah.
What's the strategic importance of those external relationships in this kind of large-scale sustainability initiative?
Transitioning to a truly circular economy requires a broader ecosystem of support.
Hmm.
Ensuring compliance with evolving environmental regulations is a fundamental aspect, of course,
Yeah.
but their proactive engagement with governmental agencies, sustainability organizations, and industry groups goes much further.
Okay.
It allows them to stay informed about upcoming regulatory changes,
Right.
understand best practices from other sectors,
Yeah.
and even actively contribute to shaping future regulations that support circular economy principles
Interesting.
within the heavy machinery industry.
That's really smart.
The study also notes that these collaborations have facilitated access to important sustainability certifications,
Okay.
as well as potential grants and incentives that further support their circular economy initiatives.
So it's like a whole network of support.
Exactly. And by sharing their experiences and working with others,
Hmm.
they're helping to drive wider adoption of these practices across the entire sector.
That's fantastic. So we've looked at the strategies, the collaborations. Now let's talk about the bottom line
Right.
and the real-world impact.
Let's do it.
The case study has a section on quantifiable impact.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of metrics did they actually achieve after implementing these changes?
This is where the real validation comes in.
Yeah.
Within the first 3 years of fully implementing these closed-loop systems,
Okay.
they saw some truly significant results.
Like what?
They achieved a remarkable 40% decrease in their raw material usage.
Oh, wow.
And they slashed their overall waste generation by an impressive 50%.
That's massive.
Yeah, and these aren't just marginal improvements.
Yo.
These are substantial reductions
Yeah.
that have a direct and positive impact
Right.
on both their environmental footprint and their operational costs.
Absolutely. And the life cycle analysis showed a 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions per unit.
It did.
That's huge. That's a huge environmental win.
It is.
What were the key drivers behind that reduction?
That significant decrease in greenhouse gas emissions is primarily attributed to the lower energy intensity of processing recycled materials
Okay.
compared to extracting and refining virgin resources.
Right.
Additionally, their reduced reliance on energy-intensive primary manufacturing processes contributed substantially.
Interesting.
The study also looked at customer feedback
Okay.
through surveys and focus groups,
Mm-hmm.
and they found a growing preference for durable, sustainably manufactured machinery.
Okay.
Customers indicated a willingness to participate in the buyback and refurbishment programs,
Yeah.
seeing value in both the longevity and the environmental responsibility of the products.
Right.
This suggests a real shift in market demand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the client achievements outlined in the case study.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like all these efforts have really translated into tangible benefits for the manufacturer themselves.
Absolutely. The study highlights a substantial 25% reduction in their overall production costs.
Wow.
This is a direct result of the savings achieved
Yeah.
through reduced raw material consumption
Right.
and the efficiencies gained from their remanufacturing and material recovery processes.
That's incredible. And as we discussed earlier, the modular design of their machinery
right.
has also led to reduced maintenance costs for their customer.
Exactly.
So it's like creating additional value.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they've really carved out a position for themselves as leaders in this sustainable manufacturing,
They have.
which must give them a real competitive advantage.
Without a doubt, by proactively embracing sustainability and achieving those internationally recognized certifications, they've significantly enhanced their brand reputation,
Right.
attracting environmentally conscious customers and investors.
Yeah.
This leadership position has also opened doors for strategic partnerships
Okay.
with other organizations that share their commitment to circular economy principles,
Interesting.
further strengthening their network and influence.
Right.
But perhaps most importantly, in the long term,
Yeah.
by proactively aligning themselves with evolving sustainability standards. They've mitigated potential risks associated with future environmental regulations
Right.
and positioned themselves for long-term resilience
Yeah.
in an increasingly resource-constrained world.
So for you listening in this deep dive into this manufacturer's journey,
Right.
it really underscores the power of a comprehensive and integrated approach to closed-loop manufacturing. It's not just about one single fix.
No,
It's about a holistic strategy,
it's about the whole thing.
encompassing everything from the initial product design to advanced waste management to collaborative partnerships.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the results that they've achieved, these significant reductions across the board in waste,
Yeah.
resource use emissions, and even production costs.
Right.
It really demonstrates the potential of this model.
It does. This case study provides a compelling real-world example
Yeah.
of how a commitment to sustainability can drive innovation and create substantial long-term value,
Absolutely.
proving that environmental responsibility and economic success can indeed go hand in hand.
It really makes you think about the bigger picture. Given these clear advantages,
Yeah.
what do you see as some of the major remaining obstacles for the widespread adoption of closed-loop manufacturing across other sectors of the heavy machinery industry?
That's a critical question.
Yeah.
While this case study offers a really valuable blueprint,
Right.
scaling these types of initiatives across the entire sector presents several potential hurdles.
Like what?
Well, for example, the initial investment in re-engineering product lines,
Okay.
implementing new technologies for material recovery,
Right.
and establishing those complex reverse logistics networks
Yeah.
can be substantial.
Yeah.
Ensuring consistent quality and performance of remanufactured components across different manufacturers,
Right.
and dealing with the sheer scale and complexity of global supply chains
Yeah.
also pose significant challenges.
It's a huge undertaking.
It is. Ultimately, broader adoption will also depend on factors like consistent consumer demand for sustainable products and supportive regulatory frameworks that incentivize circular practices.
Some really important points to consider.
Yeah,
Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us. It's been truly insightful
my pleasure.
to explore how one industry leader is tackling these critical issues.
It's an encouraging example of the kind of innovation that's possible
Yeah.
when environmental and economic considerations are strategically aligned